What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 50 of the U.S.S. CERRITOS tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today we got a little bit of a long one. We've got about a 42-minute episode. We're just going to go ahead and jump right into this without holding it off any. Um, I wanted to try to get this all done in one episode if I could. We're going to be working on the general crew quarters today. And we're going to loosely reference the screenshots that we're going to pull up here in just a moment of the CERRITOS, but we're not going to be building them down to a T. We're going to make it work within the area that I've decided to build the crew quarters in. Because what I was thinking, the best case scenario or place for me to do this would be kind of in the space that's going around engineering right now. So this first doorway right here on the left, so this open space on both the right side and the left side is where we're going to be actually building out our general crew quarters. And I think this will work out pretty good. All things considered, the only deviation that I'm going to be making from the overall layout of the general crew quarters the way it was on the show is that instead of it going in a circular motion, it's going to be going in mostly a grid. And that's just something I decided on because I think it'll look a little bit nicer. And we're just going to start getting into this. You can see that I'm starting to map out my walls, and I'm doing this based off of the placement on the doorway. Kind of thinking that could possibly work, maybe. Might end up needing to move this, actually. So we're just going to bring this going all the way over. Might be able to make this work. And then from that corner, we're just going to bring this going all the way over. All right, we're in good shape. It's matching up pretty good so far. And I think ultimately what I'm going to end up doing here is moving the doorway over to the right. I think this will be better because it'll give us a little bit more room to work with, and it'll feel a little bit more centered. So we're just going to add another row on this right side. We're just going to bring this going all the way over. And this will make sense in a moment or so. We're pretty much just wireframing out our walls and trying to get an idea of how this is going to go. All right, that's looking pretty good. What we're going to do over here is we're just going to close this up. Pretty cut and dry, just continuing the pattern that we have. The white concrete, the gray concrete, and the white concrete. Kind of hard to mess that up. All right, we're just going to do this other side. And this access, we're going to get rid of it. Normally, I'd say we're not going to need to worry about it as we close it up, but we're actually going to be building in that space. So one point or another, we're going to be coming over here, so might as well just get rid of this extra row right now. Once we get rid of that, then we're going to add the walls on the other side. As far as the walking space goes, we're really not going to be making anything any thicker than the actual corridor itself. And that's kind of the guts of what I got from the reference material, which in a moment or so I'm going to pull that up and show you so you can get an idea. But I mean, it's just basically a corridor with bunks on the sides. It's not very hard to do. But I kind of like how this came out, and it just, I think it helps definitely fill in the ship a little bit, take advantage of this open space. There really wasn't another area, or put it this way, there wasn't anything else that I could think of that I could put specifically in this area that would have worked quite as good as this, because now we're actually going to be able to have two areas for our general crew quarters, which will be kind of neat, you know, so it'll look like there's a lot of people on board. Okay, now we're going to go over to Google and we're just going to pull up a reference shot. So we're just going to type U.S.S. CERRITOS crew quarters. And see what I mean? It's not anything more. Like, it basically looks like a corridor, but on the sides here you got your bunks. You can see on the corners here it's gray, and then it has a darker gray strip. So it's not really all that fancy or deviates away from the rest of how the CERRITOS looks. So what we can start to do now that we have our walls, the placement of them down, we're going to actually go along the lines of them and add in a row of gray concrete. Going with the cut, of course. And I'm going to do this on both sides. Now those extra blocks down there, you can, if you have any access, you can just leave them. Unless you really want to delete them, but it's not going to hurt it at all. You could leave it if you want to, and it's not going to mess up the build. All right, so now we did that on the right side. We're going to do the same thing on the left side because I'm going to be building both of these general crew quarters 1 and 2, I guess you can call them, simultaneously. Now, I always feel it's best to do it in this order because you don't want to, I wouldn't recommend building one and then the other because you always want to do that while it's fresh in your mind because you're least likely to make mistakes doing it that way. All right, so far that looks pretty good. And now we're just going to fill in the center with the darker gray. And I'm not going to lie, I was thinking about at one point just doing the cyan and blue and continuing it in this room on the floor. But then I got to thinking, I want to do something just a little bit different. You don't want to have too much of the same uh, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't want to have too much of the same design cues room to room to the point that it gets plain, you know. But with that being said, you still want to carry a lot of these designs over, so this way you have a lot of familiarity with those rooms. You can see I'm skipping one row. That's just for the entryway point. We'll come back and mess with that here in a few minutes. And while I'm working on this, I've had a few people ask me when I'm going to be starting the Enterprise D. I wish I had a solid answer for you, but right now I'm still currently working on getting the rest of the outside of that ship completed. I really don't want to start the tutorial until the outside is done for a couple of reasons. One, because I want to take a screenshot of it, and when I post it, this way those screenshots match what the outside finished ship is going to look like, and also I want to make sure that I have enough recorded content so when I start building the interior, I don't catch up with myself. Because Enterprise D is going to be a big build, and I'll just say ahead of time for anybody that is not used to building a couple of ships on Minecraft, I might either hold off on doing it or do at least the mock tutorial first because I've been doing these ships for 10 years and I'm not having like a super hard time with it, but even for me it's been a challenge in some areas. Right now I'm currently on the lower hull trying to figure out all the area with the deflector dish and getting that down packed. And Enterprise Z is just a different animal. The way the shapes on it, it's kind of hard to hide from it. Like you can the Enterprise Constitution class. I mean, you compare the two, it's very very primitive in comparison to the Enterprise. Like as far as the shapes go, because like the lower hull is pretty much a circle. You've got a lot more lines on the Enterprise D, and it's one of those ships where like you really kind of got to nail it because if one thing's off too much, it kind of throws off the whole ship. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at on it, but I'm getting consistent progress done on it. So hopefully it won't be too long, and I'll be starting that up. But regardless, that's going to be the next tutorial that I tackle after the CERRITOS. And speaking of the CERRITOS, I haven't had too many people ask me in the comments section on any extra rooms you would like to see me do, excuse me, for the Cerritos on the interior. So if there's anything that you are wanting to see me build on the interior, please help me out and drop a comment below. Because once I finish the Cerritos and move on from it, I'm probably not going to be coming back to it unless there's a really significant reason to make me want to come back to it. At that point, I'll probably just be moving on to Enterprise D and then other ships after that. So I do want to get a little bit back in what we got going on here. You can see I'm in the middle point of our um, crew quarters, and I'm going with a cut at an angle, um, a slant, and I'm doing this because in a few moments we're going to start cutting out our doorways, and I'm just trying to get all that divided up. Real quick, I'm just going to swap out my music here. I remember during this recording session, Pandora was just not being my friend. Because when I build, one of my things I like to do is I like to listen to music because it helps to get me in the groove and to make that time go by faster. But on this day, Pandora was just, I wasn't feeling it. Every song that they played was either like something that I haven't wanted to listen to for like 10 years or something that I've just never listened to begin with. But yeah, you can see getting back, we're going to do the corner going at an angle for the other side. And I actually misplaced that back one. I need to do it off the left back corner. There we go. This way I have the middle. Now we're in good shape. And the rest is the axis, the open areas, we're just going to fill that back in with what we had before with gray and then the darker gray. All right, I'm going to switch back over just to change the song one more time. I apologize for that. I believe this is the last time I pull up Pandora. As you say, I get frustrated after I even changed the station because I was not feeling it. But getting back into this, we're going to close up the rest of the floor, and then we're going to start cutting away at the walls here to start making our bunks, which is going to be kind of cool. So you have the darker gray there. We're going to swap that out with the white just so that the walls are pretty much the same color and match. That would look kind of off if that was like that. So I'm not going to be doing anything too complicated. We're going to skip 2 rows and then we're going to cut away 3. That's pretty much the pattern that we're going to do on both sides. And we're starting from the middle and we're working our way back. Once we get to the back end of it, we're going to have to stop at one point because we're going to hit the facade turbo lift to go down into the lower hull. And I want to make a point not to build into that because um, that'll mess up the look of how the turbo lift looks from the inside. All right, so far so good. Got a couple more rows to bang out here, then we're going to go back and fill in the floor, and then we're going to fill in the walls, and then we're going to put in the bunk beds. Like I said, not a super complicated build, but I was surprised with how well this came out. When I started this, I really wasn't expecting to get that much out of it, and I just kind of kept going, and everything that I threw down, I liked it enough that I didn't want to delete it and do it again, and it just all kind of worked out. You also want to make sure that your walls that you're cutting away are matching the other side. All right, so now we're going into the back end. And I think we're going to be able to take out maybe one more row after this. And then we're going to hit the turbo lift corridor. So everything I'm doing right here, you're not going to do this because I've gone too far. As you can see, I'm building into the corridor and it's not going to look right. So we're just going to have to throw that wall back up. At least on this side right here, I can do 2 more cuts. And still a reasonable amount of area for the bunks. I'm not even going to lie, I didn't even count down how many bunks I have down in here, but I'm pretty sure that this is bigger than what I did even for the Disco era Enterprise for the General Crew Quarters. Pandora. It failed me today when I was doing this. All right, so we got a couple more to do. So what we're going to get ready to do actually, we're going to be filling in the back wall. We're going to be skipping a row, and then we're going to be filling that in with the darker gray concrete. So this way there's a nice differentiation between the walls that we're deleting and then the back wall. It'll look a little bit nicer. Okay. So now just going along the open cuts here, that black didn't look right. I think we might do cyan. Just going along the cut line. So we're going to be doing this everywhere that we have a doorway, or not a doorway, but a bunk opening that we made. All right. So far, so good. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Oh, and I did have somebody ask me the other day what happened with my streams. I didn't want to talk about that briefly. For right now, I made the decision that I'm not going to be streaming anymore. The only thing I'm going to be doing is putting out the videos on YouTube. Um, and I decided that for a couple of reasons, but I think right now the main focus that I should have as far as putting this content out is on the YouTube channel. Now, at some point in the future, I'll probably end up coming back and restarting up the Twitch channel. But if that's something that you wanted to see, let me know in the comments section. Um, but definitely appreciate everybody that's taken the time to check out my videos on YouTube. And as you can see, we are rocking and rolling here. We're not going to be doing anything too crazy here with the roof. You can see I'm just starting as a pattern 2 wide, and I'm just trying to keep it going down the center. And we're just doing the white concrete. And that's because I'm thinking on the sides there, I'm going to do a different color. And then on this back row here, we're just going to do one wide. I'll bring that going all the way flush with this one that's 2 rows. All right. That looks pretty cool. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We got some access in the roof here that we got to delete from where we're building on the outside of the ship. Not necessarily outside, but when we were building the ship itself. A couple of rows too far on that one. We'll fix that up. Let's get rid of this access here. We want to make sure both sides match. Again, is one of the reasons why I'm building both of these simultaneously so they both match. I think in the roof here on the sides, maybe we'll just do cyan in the roof. That'll look pretty cool. We'll give a little bit of color in the room and also stay true to a lot of the design cues that we're making with the ship, but trying to do something a little bit different at the same time. Because I think we can get away with this. You see, I'm just Instead of doing the cyan on the floors like we've been doing, I'm doing it in the ceiling for this room. So still goes with the Cerritos and our kind of our layout, but trying throwing color at different spots. Because one thing I didn't want to do, and I think it's something that anybody could easily fall a trap that anybody can fall into, is the go-to colors are usually gray or grays and whites, and when you end up with that, you end up with a pretty plain looking room. And even in next gen, like that's something like those ships, they had a lot of color on the interiors. You know, they're very vibrant. Not like a ton of like a variety, but you know, they weren't plain, black and white, kind of like what you'd see like on the Kelvin era ships. Now on the cut corner here, I'm doing black, but I'm actually going to come back here in a minute and I'm going to replace them with sea lanterns. And I ultimately decided to do that because I wanted a light going over my bunks. So if that's something you want to do, instead of doing the black like I'm doing here, you can go ahead and just do that, because in a moment I'm going to be coming back and getting rid of all of this gray or the darker gray that I'm putting going along the cut line here and swapping it out. But no, I was really happy at how this room came out, because it's one thing I've been making a point since I've started doing these tutorials, that when I'm doing building these interiors in the ships, I'm really making it a point to not build them the same. Um, for a couple of reasons. The main one being that, of course, you know, they're not all going to look the same on the interior, and also, I think these tutorials would get pretty boring if my interiors all looked exactly the same. Um, it's a great thing because I'm coming up with some nice variety, but it's taking a little bit of time here and there to come up with different designs. In this particular room, it really wasn't that big of a deal because I had the screenshots to go off of. But in other cases, like with some of the other rooms on the ship, like for example, like the torpedo room, um, that's something I even want to talk about. Is I had somebody mention in the comments section that I should do the torpedo room, and then I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? I just realized that I have not built the torpedo launcher on the Cerritos, and I started thinking, where is exactly the torpedo launcher on the Cerritos? And I sat there and I've looked at a couple of different models. I've looked at a couple of different 3D models, and I cannot figure out for the life of me, for sure, where the torpedo launcher is. I kind of think it's in the lower hull, directly above the deflector dish. But if you know the answer to that question, definitely let me know in the comments section, because that's something I wasn't sure on, and I was thinking about it. Because that's something I definitely want to add on this ship before it's done. Uh, and of course, if there's any other rooms you want to see me add, please drop a comment while I'm still working on this ship, and we'll kind of go from there. But I think we're getting to a point where we're starting to um, really get towards the end of this tutorial. There's not that much more I can do for the Cerritos. I mean, there's still some more rooms to fill in, but there's just not that many reference screenshots to go off of. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. I don't know if we're going to get as much as the interior done on this ship like we did with the Disco Era Enterprise. Just kind of depends on how much stuff, reference material I can find, and then also depending on how much, what everybody in the community wants to see. So definitely keep that in mind. But getting back into this, we're making some pretty good progress. At this point, I'm just trying to get my lighting in place, and then get our doorway squared away. Yeah, and see, this was ultimately the reason why I started, where I was going to add in the lights inside these uh, nooks here, because it's just so dark in between them, and that just, I don't know, it didn't feel right. You can see the way I'm stacking these bunk beds, so now we can have 3 bunks per pod, which is pretty cool. Now, going along this open cut in the doors, we're just going to go one back. And we're just going to fill this all in with the gray. We'll have like a tiny bit of dead space, but that's okay. Definitely leave some room for whatever reason. If you want to add a bathroom or a closet or whatever you want to do, you have that extra space there that you can take advantage of that. I think we're going to go through and we're going to place all these beds down. And once we get our beds placed, then we're going to come back and redo the lighting for the bunks. A little bit tedious placing these blue blocks down, but um, it's a small sacrifice to make to get the bunks to stack like this. Because it would just kind of make sense for general crew quarters that they would have bunks like this. It would be a very efficient way of maximizing a short amount of space. All right, that looks pretty solid, but now I've entombed myself inside this dead space while I gotta cut out a hole so we can get back inside our crew quarters. So we're looking pretty good. We just got a couple more walls to fill in here. And you can either cut it off just like I did right there and just fill in the doorway, or you can go straight across. You're not going to see it from this side once we fill in all these walls unless you have a doorway coming in here. But you'll have a little bit of extra room. You could fill in bathrooms on pretty much almost all the sides um, of this and have a little bit of space to do that. Only thing we're missing at this point is some extra lighting, which we're going to take care of in just a moment. See, I'm planning ahead a little bit and placing down a couple of those blocks ahead of time just to make it go by just a little bit faster. Oh, messed that one up. You can see I'm going in a certain spot for a reason, because as you can just see right there that if you don't stand in the right spot where you're looking with your, excuse me, where you're looking with your cursor, it definitely makes a difference where the placement's going to be. Pretty much figured you have to do it from this back end here. Otherwise, it's either not going to place or it's going to do something funky. I almost used the blue beds in here, but I don't know, just something with the red. Again, just goes into having a little bit more color in the room. That was just kind of my decision with it. But I think really you can use any of the color beds on here, and I think it would be fine. This was just kind of like it's dealer's choice. Is just what I settled on. But there's no wrong um, bed that you can put down here as long as you have them. Got a hole here. Let's fill this in. We're just going to do the white up top. Now, since we did that, it's just so dark here now, which this is what led me to add in all that extra lighting. All right, so we've got one side done. Let's see if we can get this side done a little bit faster. We'll just fill that in, and then we got to do the other side. And I get asked this from time to time from people, like how I came up um, with this pattern. And like, when I show you in the beginning of the episode, the reference picture, that's always a starting point for me. Um, Even like, let's say like there was no reference picture for the Cerritos, like as far as like the crew quarters goes, I would still go on Google and see what else I could find. If it wasn't the crew quarters for the Cerritos, maybe it would have been the crew quarters for the Enterprise D. If you can't find the crew quarters for the Enterprise D, then you go to the next best thing, and the next best thing. You just keep working your way down until you can find one. Um, that's definitely going to be a problem as we go through this ship, because with the Cerritos, we've only had one season so far to go off of, so there's not that much of the ship that they've shown. Um, but where we need to, we'll tap into the Enterprise D for that, because that's Next Generation has luckily had 7 seasons. Yeah, no, going back to, I'm definitely that thing with where the torpedo launcher is, that's bugging me. I tried looking online to see if I can find an answer on that. And like I didn't get anywhere with it. So I'm hoping that somebody in the comment section knows for certain where that is. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that it's probably directly above the deflector dish. It kind of looks like it, but I'm not 100% certain on that. I'm not gonna lie, what I'm probably gonna do if I never get a solid answer on it, I think that's where I'm ultimately gonna put them. The only downside with that will be is that I've already pre-built out the interior of that lower hull, and I've pretty much dedicated it for the torpedo, or not for the torpedo, for the deflector dish. But I have a little bit of extra room left over. I might be able to convert that space into like a torpedo room area, at least for the interior. Um, but I'll get into that probably by this weekend, because I didn't get everything done that I wanted to get done on the Cerritos. I did a combination working on the Cerritos this past weekend as well as Enterprise D. Um, and even the Enterprise D, I'm still not done building the outside of it. Uh, I've been working on the deflector dish the last couple of days. I've gotten a lot of progress done on some other areas. I've gotten some detailing done on the engines on it, and I started to map out, or throw at least down the foundation for where eventually the bridge is going to go. But the saucer section on Enterprise D is still not closed in yet. So I still might be maybe like a couple of weeks away from starting it. We'll see. The problem that's slowing me down right now is that I don't have that much time during the week to dedicate to building these ships like I used to. But that's okay, because I still have a ton of content already pre-recorded for the Enterprise D. So once that does start, it's really going to be off to the races, and we're just going to start going with it. So I know this part's getting a little repetitive, but we're slowly creeping towards the end of today's episode. Got a couple more bunks to put down, and then our lighting, and then we're going to be calling this one a day. Yeah, not a super complicated build, but I was pretty happy how this came out. After it was done and I just kind of walked through it, I was like, this looks pretty good. The only thing that's kind of hurting it right now is is the lighting. It needs more lighting. This cut line, we don't need this anymore. We're just going to fill that in. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So what we're going to do is now we're going to go along the roof. And for those of you that have not done this yet, if you want to add in those sea lanterns, I definitely recommend it. It's going to brighten the room up quite a bit. Just want to be careful that you do not delete your bed. Got a couple more rows complete. And once we're done with that, we're going to do a quick walkthrough. Yeah, see, that's already, I personally think it looks way better than what it did before, because now you can actually see all the way through without it getting all dark and stuff. And I mean, on some ships you can get away with that. Like, for example, like Constitution class Enterprise. Like, I'd say that that's a ship that it's not as bright as some of these newer ships. Um, that's something that I remember anyway. Especially like watching like the original series, like walking down like some of the hallways. Like, they had an ambiance to it. But these newer shows, they did a pretty good job lighting the ships up. So we're gonna have to do the same thing to try to stay true to that as much as we can. One of the things that I realized after building this is that I kind of feel bad for the general crew, or for the general crewmen and women on this ship, because I mean, I hope to God for their sake that the warp core isn't emitting any type of like radiation or anything like that. I mean, if it is, they're going to be the first ones to get it, because they're like literally hugging the warp core pretty much being in this thing, which is horrible, but I think that's kind of funny too. Like, in all honesty, it really would not surprise me if that's the way it was like on the actual ship, because a lot of like the design cues on the Cerritos, it's just like an ongoing joke, um, which I think it's hilarious. Yeah, see, look how nice that looks. I mean, just by adding that extra light in there, like this room, it just really makes it come to life with the rest of the corridors and everything. Like, it looks fantastic. Only compromise that I made here is my doorway is 2 wide instead of being 3 wide, but that's okay for right here. We can make that exception with this one room, and I don't think it'll be a problem. We're not done yet. We have one tiny bit of detail to do when we walk in from the side corridors here. What I would like to do is these pillars, like going along this long white wall here, maybe to add in some of these pillars here. We got to be careful where we add them, make sure that we don't cut into our turbo lift, which I'm actually going to do on accident, and then I'm going to be moving. Um, it's going to be this next row that we're going to put down. Yeah, on this side it's fine, but as soon as I put it on the other side, I go right into the turbo lift, and that's not going to work. And I didn't even realize it on this side. It wasn't until I went over to the other side and I repeated the same process, but I was standing at a different angle. And I was like, oh crap, I just built in my turbo lift again, so I need to go back and change it. But I'll show you what I did to get around it, and it's like super simple. I'm just going to move this pillar that I'm putting down right here. I'm just going to move it back by one. So this way, it's directly behind the turbo lift, but it's almost the same proportion as before. We can definitely get away with that. We'll just have to make the same change on the other side. So before I go any further and I don't forget, I'm going to swing over to the other side and make that same change now. Yeah, I love how this room came out with the lighting and everything. It looks so nice. See, a lot of this I determined off of just having or using the space that I had available. This is where I talk about, letting shape of your interior once you get your corridors down kind of dictate the layout of some things, and this is definitely one of those cases. What I could even do is like a row of white terracotta, maybe like once right before we walk in, right there, like on the floor. Maybe that could be a thing. Yeah, I'm just doing this right here just to get a little bit more color on this wall here because it just felt like a lot of white. Yeah, see on this doorway, on this last pillar of the white terracotta, we're going to do a row on the bottom. This way that would be like the point where we're actually walking into general crew quarters. I think that'll work out pretty good. And I think that's going to wrap us up. That's going to be the last thing that we're going to do today. Like I said, kind of a long one, but I wanted to make a point to get this done in one video if I could. And I'm pretty happy with the outcome. If you'd enjoy, or excuse me, if you enjoyed this video, if you can help me out and hit that like and subscribe button and supporting the channel, I can't thank you enough for that. In fact, new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you always get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my new Starship Evo builds dropping on Mondays and my Minecraft videos dropping Tuesdays through Fridays. And those videos drop at 7 p.m. Eastern. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.